Hello everybody and welcome back to another EDH deck tech idea video. Today I'm featuring Kellan, Inquisitive Prodigy. He is a 4 mana 3/4 with flying and vigilance, and whenever he attacks, destroy up to one target artifact. If you control that permanent, draw a card. He also has an adventure side where you can pay 2 mana to investigate and you may play an additional land this turn. If you have enough land drops in hand, you can bring out Kellan in pretty easily on turn 3 and then he'll overtake in the air. We are going to win this game by using Kellan's attack trigger to generate a lot of value or either to take out threats from our opponents and at some point win with a combo. We are going to play cards like Echo Wellspring, a 2 mana artifact, and when it enters the battlefield or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. Bring Kellan out on turn 3, and on turn 4 you can simply cast Echo Wellspring, draw a card on ETB, attack with Kellan, destroy it and draw another card. Academy Manufacturer, a 3 mana 1/3, and if you would create a clue, food or treasure token, instead create one of each. Of course we are going to need a huge supply of artifact tokens for Kellan's attack trigger, so Academy Manufacturer is definitely a staple in this kind of deck. Solemn Simulacrum, a 4 mana 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield, search a library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. When it dies, you may draw a card. Tamiyo's Journal, a 5 mana legendary artifact, and at the beginning of your upkeep, investigate. You can also tap it and sacrifice 3 clues to search a library for a card and put that card into your hand and then you shuffle your library. Either you use all of those clue tokens to generate more value with Kellan, or you accumulate several of them to tutor for a very powerful card for your combo. Let's take care of threats from our opponents. We play Liquid Metal Talk, a 2 mana artifact. You can tap it to add 1 generic to your mana pool. Or you can also tap it so target non-land permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. So instead of drawing a card by destroying one of our artifacts, we turn our opponent's threat into an artifact, swing with Kellan and simply destroy it. Liquid Metal Coating, a 2 mana artifact, and you can tap it so target permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. If you want to become threat number 1, you will simply turn your opponent's lands into artifacts and destroy it with Kellan's attack trigger. Let's talk about a few creatures that we are going to play in this deck. Fangren Marauder, a 6 mana 5/5, and whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may gain 5 life. Tangled Trove Kelp, a 7 mana 6/6 with War 2, and at the beginning of each combat, other clues you control become 6/6 plant creatures in addition to their other types until end of turn. You can also pay 2 mana and sacrifice it to draw a card. Depending on how quick you can accumulate an army of clue tokens, this can also be another win con. Earthwall Illuminator, a 2 mana 1/3 with flying, and whenever you investigate for the first time each turn, investigate an additional time. Kappa Cannoneer, a 6 mana 4/4 with Improvise and Ward 4. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on Kappa Cannoneer and it can't be blocked this turn. Fort Monitor, of course we played in this deck, a 7 mana 2/2 with affinity for artifacts, flying, and when it enters the battlefield you draw 2 cards. Adrix and Nev Twincasters, a 4 mana 2/2 with War 2, and if one or more tokens would be created under your control, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. Doubling effects are always very powerful, and it will definitely help to speed up your game plan. Due to the fact that we are playing the Academy Manufacturer and a lot of doubling effects, we also care about food tokens. So we play Peregrine Took. If one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus an additional food token are created instead. You can sacrifice 3 foods and draw a card. The Goose Mother, 2 mana and X for a 2/2 flying, and it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. When it enters the battlefield, create half X food tokens rounded up. Whenever the Goose Mother attacks, you may sacrifice a food, and if you do so, draw a card. Sir Ginger, the Meal Ender, a 2 mana 3/1, and it has Trample, Hexproof, and Haste as long as an opponent controls a Planeswalker. Whenever another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Sir Ginger and scry 1. You can pay 2 mana, tap it, and sacrifice Sir Ginger so you gain life equal to its power. Let's go over a few very powerful enchantments in this deck. Artificer class, a 2 mana class, and on the first chapter, the first artifact spell you cast each turn costs 1 less to cast. Level 2 says, when it becomes level 2, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an artifact card. Put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Level 3 says, at the beginning of your end step, create a token that's a copy of target artifact you control. Mechanized Production, a 4 mana enchantment aura, and enchant artifact you control. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a copy of enchanted artifact. Then, if you control 8 or more artifacts with the same name as one another, you win the game. This card is another win con of yours, as it cares about every artifact and not only the one that you have enchanted with it. Teferi's Ageless Insight, a 4-mana legendary enchantment, and if you would draw a card except for the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. Thopter's Spy Network, a 4-mana enchantment, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control an artifact, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. So you definitely want to make sure that this is always enabled. And whenever one or more artifact creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. Trail of Evidence, 3-mana enchantment, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, investigate. Well, you are in blue, so you will most likely run the usual counterspells. Viridian Revel, a 3-mana enchantment, and whenever an artifact is put into an opponent's graveyard from the battlefield, you may draw a card. So if you use your liquid metal coating to destroy one of your opponent's permanents, it is an artifact, so you still get to draw your card. You want to win more, you get it. So let me explain the combo of how we are going to win with this deck. You either need Tireless Tracker or Tireless Provisioner on the battlefield. Both of them have a landfall mechanic that you either create a food token or a treasure token, or as Tireless Tracker says, you investigate. What you then also need on the battlefield is Kodama of the Eastry, a 6-mana 6/6 with reach, and whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. So once Kodama is on the field and one of your Tireless Trackers or Provisioners on the field too, you will just play Simic Growth Chamber, and when it enters the battlefield, you have to return a land you control to its owner's hand. As soon as Simic Growth Chamber enters the battlefield, Kodama will also trigger, so you'll first return Simic Growth Chamber to your hand. But before this Kodama trigger, you will let the landfall trigger resolve from Tireless Provisioner or Tireless Tracker. And once the clue, food, or treasure token has entered the battlefield, that will trigger another Kodama trigger, with which you are able to put the Simic Growth Chamber into play again. And with this, you will repeat the process until you have an infinite amount of tokens. Once you have accumulated a huge board of tokens, you will either have a haste enabler on the field, and then you will play Cyberdrive Awakener, a 6-mana 4/4 flying, and other artifact creatures you control are flying. And when he enters the battlefield, until end of turn, each non-creature artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base, power, and toughness 4/4. Or you'll overload Rise and Shine, a 2-mana sorcery, so target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature. Put 4 +1/+1 counters on each artifact that became a creature this way, and once you will have it overloaded, all of your clues, foods, and treasures will become 4/4s, and then you can easily swing for the win. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I will play in Kellan Inquisitive Prodigy. Let me know down in the comments below which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say, see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.